Okay, we should be good now. Okay, so today's lesson is not so much about finance, it's how you structure your spend, and how by structuring your spend in a good way or a bad way, it basically affects sales and marketing. Okay, so having spent my kind of entire career in sales and marketing and trying to build businesses, it is very clear that there is a kind of right way and or should I say a less risky way to basically run your business rather than other ways. So basically, this is what this is about, and I'm going to tell it through a story, okay? Because I don't want to go so much into the finance side of it, because that's not my bag. I'm not a finance person. This is really a case study of times that I've been in multiples of my own companies, and the impact that had on sales and marketing. Okay, so basically what we're going to be discussing today is what we're going to be discussing today is okay, so understanding cost components. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about direct costs, the difference in a direct cost to an indirect cost. Then we're going to be talking about margin, operating expenses. Then we're going to be looking at sales and marketing calculations, the cost of customer acquisition, and break-even analysis. And we're going to be doing all of that through a case study. Okay, so I'm not going to be asking you to do financial calculations or anything like that. What I'm just going to be illustrating is what happens when you get the balance of these costs in the wrong way, and what can end up happening in terms of sales, marketing, and obviously the impact of sales and marketing is on growth. Okay, so please don't think of this as a finance course, because it's really not. Right, first of all, let me introduce you to our fictional company. Okay, our fictional company is called Dudes with Drones. Okay, and here they are. They are a really passionate bunch of people that basically like high acceleration sports. And what they do is they buy drones. So they've got 3 drones. Each of these drones cost about 100 grand each. They got some seed money from their parents, and basically they bought 3 of these drones. And what they do is they video high performance, super exciting sports events. So that is Dudes with Drones. Okay, there they are. They're looking really happy because they're loving their life, loving their business. And lucky for them, when they first started doing the recordings and the videos of this super accelerating, exciting sports, dangerous sports, they got picked up quite quickly by people like Red Bull, and so the business is doing well. It's all going really well for these Dudes with Drones. They're happy. I mean, they haven't quite got a sports car yet, but they are really living the life with this new company. Okay, so now let's just look at the type of costs that the Dudes with Drones have. Okay, so what they sell is basically they turn up to a mountain or whatever, and excuse me, I'm not somebody who knows sports that well, or even somebody who knows anything about drones, but basically what happens is they turn up to these exciting, challenging mountains or whatever, and they recce the place, they work out where the drones are going to go, and then basically the sports event starts, and they start filming it with these really high powered drones, and manage to get them in all sorts of really sexy angles, and the videos are like, wow, people just love them. Okay, so let's just go through the costs that the Dudes with Drones you know, end up having with to operate their business. Okay, so the first thing is they've got direct costs. Okay, so these are direct costs that they can't operate the business without. Obviously, if your company is called Dude with Drones, you know, you're expected to have some drones. Okay, so the first thing they've got is they've got super expensive AI enabled drones. The second thing they've got is they've got on the drones, they've got these super high speed cameras, okay, which are on the and of course, you know, again, you know, it's all well and good at having the drone, but if you don't have the camera, then you can't do the filming, right? And then they've got all the associated equipment, you know, to go with that, right? So all of the stuff that, you know, Sam would know all about, because he does know about drones, so I can't get too technical on this one, but all the backup equipment you need to basically get those, you know, the videos prepped and ready. Then they've got some direct labor, right? Unfortunately, these AI enabled drones, you know, they have got AI, but they're not driving themselves. Okay, so you need humans to basically offer this service. Okay, so these are quite technical people. They get paid well. So you've got drone operators. You then need safety teams. So, you know, they need to be paid to make sure that everybody is safe on site. And even though they're doing some dangerous, you know, filming, you want to make sure that, you know, everybody is happy. And you've also got on-site technicians, because some of the areas that these dudes with drones go, you know, need to make sure that they're safe, but also the drones can sometimes get, you know, slightly damaged, and so you need to have technicians on site in order to make sure that, you know, if the drones do go down, they can be tinkered with slightly to get them back up in the air and doing their thing. Then for each project that they do, right, they also have project specific costs. Okay, so those project specific costs are location permits, travel permits, equipment transport, and all of this basically makes up the direct cost of each project. Okay, so it is impossible for them to have a situation where they are delivering this really super high, you know, exciting service without these direct costs. Okay, these are the direct costs of them delivering out their service. There is no way they can continue to make any money without these direct or fixed costs. Okay, so every time they get a sale, these are the direct costs that, you know, are consumed with offering that service. Then whether they get any business or they don't get any business that month, yeah, they've also got a whole load of indirect costs. And those indirect costs need to be paid for, even if they don't get any sales. Even if all of the dudes with drones end up getting COVID and they're like, I'm sorry, I'm completely out, there's still a whole set of costs that they need to pay for, right? So they need to pay for software licenses. That happens. They can't just stop because they've got stuff in the cloud and yada, 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 right? That still goes on. They've got cloud storage. They've got equipment maintenance. These things are, you know, they need to be constantly looked after to keep them on the road. They also have, you know, stuff like fixed costs in terms of insurance, legal, liability insurance, all of that kind of stuff that has to be paid for. You can't suddenly stop if you're not going out into the field, right? And then, of course, they've also got people back in the office, right? People back in the office that are basically doing the admin, they're doing the office support, and they're keeping the whole thing together, okay? So again, if all three dude with drones end up, you know, not being able to get out into the field, they have still got a whole load of indirect costs that they are stuck with. Yeah, that is very, very difficult for them to, you know, slide these costs around or do anything with them. They are fixed costs. Okay, and then what you've got is you've got some spelling errors on this slide. Now, please don't look at that spelling errors on the side. I am dyslexic and Canva does not have a very good spell check. So apologies about the spelling on this. As we go to operating expenses, I immediately realized that there are some spelling errors on it. Then we have operating expenditures, right? So operating expenditures are the types of expenditure that you can decide to make or not decide to make, okay? And this is the fundamental problem with managing growth, okay? Because the direct costs and the indirect costs are often baked in, Okay. And your ability to grow is often in and around your operating expenses. So typically it's sales and marketing and, you know, stuff like training and development, right? Those are the first things to go. So the kind of learning from this slide is that, you know, dudes with drones have, as they grow, they have bigger and bigger direct costs, bigger and bigger indirect costs. And if they want to continue growing, they will have, you know, increasing operating expenses. And of course, everybody wants to grow. Okay. If that's what is in the zeitgeist, everyone wants to be bigger than they were yesterday. Right. But, you know, as they do say, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, right? So we do need to be careful with, you know, growth with regards to, you know, whether it is profitable growth or not profitable growth. So what happens to dudes with drones? Well, like, you know, like every business underneath the sun, shit happens, right? Shit happens in business all the time. Things that we don't think are going to happen, we can't really plan for, no matter how much we do. You know, things just go wrong, right? And that's not even, you know, looking at the market forces. You know, that's not even looking at Porter's 5 forces. This is just something internally to the business that basically went wrong. And for poor dude with drones, what ended up happening with the dudes in drones is that they were on a really exciting shoot, and they were basically, you know, filming. They got the customer was like, God, that's so exciting. You know, can I hold the equipment to drive the drone? And unfortunately, the drone ended up crashing. So it was a full-blown crash. And out the window was not only the drone for 50,000, but also the camera. So what did the dudes with drones do? Well, of course, they went back to the insurance company because, it was, as we've seen, they do insure. And the insurance company, unfortunately, told them that their insurance was no longer valid because the controller was in the hands of one of their customers, not in the hands of the dudes with drones, right? So this was something that they hadn't really realized. They hadn't really kind of taken this into account. Obviously, the business is, you know, evolving really, really quickly. The devil is always in the detail. And this was a piece of detail that the dudes with drones, unfortunately, missed. And so there they were with their business. They are down a drone, right? So if they're down a drone, that means that they can't, you know, go out into the field with 3 drones. They're only going out into the field with 2 drones. So this affected sales, right? So this is not good for the dudes with drones. And not only that, is that they've got to find another 100K to replace that drone and that equipment. So they're not feeling, you know, particularly good. So what's happening with the dudes with drones now is of course, you know, there's anger, there's disappointment, there's sadness, and all of that kind of emotions that goes with, oh my God, what the hell just went on? We have this beautiful business, we're just cruising through, everything is good. And then, oh my God, it's all gone very, very, very badly wrong because, you know, they can't make the sales because they don't have the equipment. And obviously they start looking at their business with new eyes, trying to understand, you know, what has been going on. So the first thing that happens when, you know, an unexpected horrible event happens is the management team get really distracted. They get really, really distracted, and you know, it's all a little bit chaotic. You know, there's a bit of infighting going on. They're looking to fight with the insurance company, but even that is really tricky. The insurance company is not moving. There's constant conversations, constant resource going in to basically try to get the insurance company to move. They go back to their customers and see, you know, could something be done there? So a lot of time, effort, and energy basically being wasted on trying to kind of, you know, manage this event. And all of that has a really high impact on, you know, the rest of the business. So suddenly they start looking at the money that they can stop spending, right? Because the business is not making the money it was, but also it's got, you know, different types of costs, as we discussed. So you've got your direct, your indirect, and then your operating costs. Start looking at those costs and going, right, well, what can we do about these costs, right? Because, you know, there's not more money coming in, and we're running out. We're quite simply running out of money. So the first thing they start looking at is the customer acquisition costs. So these are the variable costs. They've already, decided they're not going to do any training or anything like that. So now they're, moving down into, the sales and marketing conversations. And they start looking at how they're spending their money in terms of customer acquisition. Okay. And what they realize is for each new client, what they are spending is between $2.5 to $3,000 plus a month on direct customer acquisition costs. Okay, so that is paid for advertising, right? And this heavy reliance on paid on advertising means that as soon as they stop using that paid for advertising, their ability to basically acquire new clients obviously craters as well, right? So you've got these forces that are affecting the business, which are like, we've got to cut costs. The only costs that we can cut are, the variable costs, right? Like, pay per ad. But of course, the downside of that is obviously they're not able to acquire new clients. So they look at their marketing and they're like, right, well, what have we got going on here that, has not got a direct cost for customer acquisition? And then they start looking at their organic marketing, right? So organic marketing is things like your mailing lists, is things like your social following. And unfortunately, these dudes with drones, they absolutely love their drones, right? They love and adore their drones. They don't necessarily love and adore social media marketing or developing a mailing list or doing all those things that you have to do if you want to, cut your cost of marketing. The other thing that they, underestimated is the equipment, right? The equipment. So they underestimated the operating costs. And of course, because they've had this accident, the insurance costs are increasing as well, right? Because they've had an accident, they tried to claim on it, even though they couldn't, they're still basically being asked to, ramp up their insurance costs. And the software costs are, also scaling rapidly. So they need to have a look at those costs and see if they can get those down. And then they look at what the impact of the paid advertising is actually having. And what they're seeing is that because, dudes with drones was such a high growth business relatively on, such a sexy business, there have been a lot of people that have said, I love drones too, right? So we know from Market Porter's 5 forces, what's the barrier to entry? Well, you need to love drones. You need to basically have some money to buy drones, and bosh, we've got dudes with drones, times 2, right? So, the reality is that, from having their telephone just being bombarded with, great opportunities for sales, now that's not really happening. So their conversion rate is going down from the paid ads. Okay. They've also realized that although it's so cool to go to trade shows, because basically the brand is out there and everyone's slapping them on the back going, dudes with drones, you are absolutely where it's at. You have nailed it. You know what's going on. The reality is that they didn't come out with a whole load of purchase orders from the trade shows that they've been on. They met a lot of geeks that wanted to talk about, drones and cameras and stuff like that. But did they walk out with a load of purchase orders? No, they didn't. Also, because they've done some really cool stuff with, Red Bull and stuff like that, they've been approached by a PR agency, and the PR agency was like, we can definitely take you all sorts of places. Red Bull is just the beginning. And so they had signed an agreement with a PR agency to basically, get this PR agency to blow them up to the next level. So this is what the 3 dudes in drones are worrying about at the moment. They're looking at their costs. They're in the pub all together and they're like, you know what? We need to start making some changes, right? Otherwise, quite simply, we're going to run out of money, right? We're going to run out of money, and then there will no longer be any dudes with drones, right? So what are we going to do about it? Okay. So the first thing that they're looking at is the cost base with regards to obviously pushing down the overall fixed cost base and making the variable costs much more in line with much more in line with when they get, you know, gigs and deals and sales in. Okay, so the first thing that they've done is they're going to move from permanent contracts where they can to freelance contracts, right? So when they've got work, they can pay people to do that work, but those people are not on fixed term contracts. Okay, the second thing that they're going to do is they're going to look overall for cheaper suppliers. So this means that they're going to be looking for people to process their video and people to do that, you know, outside wherever. So let's say dudes with drones are in, you know, the US, right? They're going to look to get their videos to be processed and to be, you know, branded up with cheaper suppliers in somewhere like the Philippines. Yeah, so they're going to overall look to reduce those hard costs that are baked into their organization. The next thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at their product profitability. So they're going to look at each and every products that they have, okay, and they are going to pull apart the costs involved with delivering that client product, and they are going to try and work out how and where the money is made and how and where the money is not made. Okay, so what they're going to try and understand is what elements of the services that they offer make money and what don't. And by doing that, they are able to understand not only where their costs lie for each individual, you know, event or whatever that they do, but also they're able to really start having conversations in and around what areas excite the client for that product and service. Okay, so it's not just understanding where the product and services is made, but it's also, the money is made on the product and service. It's also pulling apart what, you know, the client really values about that product and service. Then they look at all of the things in terms of operating costs, right? We're now in the age of AI, and a lot of businesses are still working out how they can utilize AI to standardize processes. The first step in automation is obviously understanding what your standard operating procedures are, right? Your SOPs, okay? So as a business, no matter how small you are, you know, have a very, very clear understanding of the common processes that you do. And what you want to do is, if those processes stay linear and stay the same all the time, you want to be driving towards automating those, right? So anything to do with pricing, anything to do with payments, anything to do with contracts, anything to do with customer escalation, anything to do with, you know, feedback and reviews, all of these are standardized processes and should be automated, right? And you can do most of that through your website, right? So if we are going to have a whole section on, you know, basically creating a website brief, but, you know, if you use something like WordPress, which is the most common, you know, way of basically creating a WordPress, it's got millions of different bolt-ons. The beauty of that is that you can very, very easily standardize a lot of these processes, you know, through automating them. And that then brings us on to the next section. Now, there's going to be a big area of automation in the course in the final weeks, because automation in marketing really is just starting to kick off. And it is a really exciting area for companies that, you know, are smaller like ourselves to really get ahead by automating what we're doing with regards to, you know, list building, email marketing, content creation, all of that kind of stuff. So automation, there's a huge amount that you can do just from the back end of your website in terms of, you know, stuff. Website domains and hosting is definitely, I would say, under direct costs, because you can't really have a business without a website. Or maybe there are businesses that can, but certainly no businesses that I'm aware of. I mean, people do, you know, look. Yeah, now having said that, okay, the balance of power in website versus social is changing quite dramatically as well. So those of you who are, you know, younger than me will know that, you know, you know, things like email marketing and things like, you know, websites aren't as popular as just going to look at that person's social, right? If you're going to find out what products and service that person's got, typically you will start out their socials. So the balance of, you know, what is more important and what is less important is changing. And that is directly comes down to this idea of authenticity, right? The idea that, you know, people believe that, you know, brands are not as authentic as human beings. And so they want to see the human beings that are behind the brand. And again, we're going to talk a lot more about that authenticity and individuals being the face of their business more so than ever before. You know, if you go back 20 years ago, it was very much the corporation. We are IBM. You know, IBM was front and center. It wasn't the people behind it. Now, you know, you look at stuff like, you know, Tesla and Elon Musk. I mean, Elon is the star show, right? It's not really Tesla. And that gives you a good idea, you know, how, you know, even, you know, Tesla's share price is affected by what Elon Musk does, not by the fact that, you know, over the last, whatever, you know, 6 months, you know, Tesla has actually, you know, dropped, you know, the number of new car registrations by 36% or whatever it is. But yet still Tesla's, you know, share price has gone up because of Elon. So those are two really, really good examples, you know, of the power of personality behind the brand. So, you know, what they're looking at is, look, how can we take away costs for marketing, costs for anything to do with costs that they don't have to, you know, incur, but still move their marketing forward. And obviously they are focusing on list building, email campaign, content creation. So the dudes with drones, they are sitting around just having a big chat, and, you know, more of their mates join them in the pub, and, you know, they're nerding out, and it becomes really clear every time they're with their mates in the pub, right, that there is a passion for drones, right? People love drones. Drones are cool, okay? Even servicing drones is cool. Like, there's nothing really uncool about a drone for a lot of people. Like, people are like, how big is it? You know, can it carry a banana? You know, you know, the list of curiosities in around a drone, you know, is kind of never ending. What's the smallest thing you can get it through? I mean, Sam tried to do this with a window, you know, and he basically flew his drone through tinier and tinier windows. Like, the list of kind of stuff that you can do with drones is just endlessly fascinating, okay, to a huge amount of people on socials and on the internet. So their mates are like, dude, why don't you, you know, just basically show us what goes on every day in your world? Okay, like, we just want to know more about drones. Am I a drone, you know, customer? No, I'm not, right? You know, I work in a factory, I work behind a bar, I work in a tech company or whatever. No, I personally am not your target market. But hell, you know, I am super excited about what you do with dudes and drones, because it seems like a damn exciting business. So they're like, okay, well, you know, it's a bit awkward because obviously, you know, one is the dude, you know, the geek drone. One is the guy that, you know, is basically takes the telephone calls and, you know, has the conversations with customers about, you know, how dangerous, you know, their technicians can be on a mountain. And, you know, one of them is the art guy, you know, trying to make the videos as super exciting as humanly possible. None of them, okay, have been on social media. You know, they do their thing where, you know, they might be on Instagram and they're sharing posts of, you know, their travels. But I mean, they haven't really taken it seriously. And it's a big leap of faith. They're like, well, I feel a bit awkward. I don't really know where to start. And so where they decide to start is to just leap in. Okay. They just decide to leap in. And if any of you have been to my TikTok channel, you will see that is exactly what I did. I just leapt in. Was it awkward? Oh my God, it was awkward. It still is awkward, right? It is just not easy at all. But the more you make yourself do it, the better you get. Okay. And I can tell you that because, again, Sam on the call that has done loads of socials on Instagram for a business that he used to run. And over time, you do get better at it. But practice is the only way you get better at it. And the awkwardness does start to go away, just like public speaking or just like anything you don't do often, right? But you have to start somewhere, okay? So I'm just gonna start and talk about some of the people that, you know, I already get on my TikTok feed, right? So I'm not into drones, but I am, you know, very, very heavily into, you know, fashion and handbags. So there's people there that basically take apart, you know, high-end fashion and show the quality and how that particular, you know, item is made. And I'm fascinated by that. I want to know what happens when you rip apart a Hermes handbag. You know, how good is the stitching? Where is the fabric from? You know, what's the leather? Love it, right? So I'm totally into that. You know, I'm totally into that. There's another guy that runs, this is the guy in the middle, right? He runs a guy called a channel called Amalfi Jets, and all he does is take calls from people that basically want to hire private jets. And it's just amazing what people want on their private jets, right? It's just him taking sales calls, right? And I'm still fascinated by Colin at Amalfi Jets. You know, he doesn't do anything else. Like, we don't see him working out. We don't see his life. We don't see anything other than him sitting on a phone and basically just, you know, taking sales calls. And you're all like, whoa, you know. And the same thing, like, if you were somebody wanting to, you know, see how the drone industry works, you would be fascinated to see all the conversations that, you know, high-tech XYZ dude in the middle picture there goes about, you know, talking to his clients about all the cool things that basically, you know, the drones can and can't do. And then finally, you've got, you know, the guy that basically, you know, puts the videos together and does all of the, well, you know, feeds are absolutely full of technical stuff, people doing things that are different, and you really don't need to like set up your camera or, you know, do anything for this. You know, the best types of videos are literally stick your camera on and, you know, just start recording. So don't over worry. And these guys don't. None of the people on my TikTok feed. I don't use Instagram, so forgive me. I don't even know how it works. I'm sure it's exactly the same on Reels. Cosmo and Zavi keep telling me it is. I just don't use it. But, you know, this behind the scenes idea really does create customer advocacy and an interest in what is going on, you know, in the company. And so, you know, whether you're just starting up or whether you're doing a rebrand or whether people find it interesting. They want to know the authentic person behind the organization and what is going on, particularly if you can move that all important, you know, why into the videos that you are creating. Okay, so this was a big move for Dudes with Drones. They've never done this before, and, you know, for people on the call that are my age, you know, this is a bit of a miracle kind of, you know, idea. You know, it was never something in the zeitgeist before. This is basically leveraging your personal passions. So if you are in business and you are, you know, just about to start Flora Gym, for example, that's obviously a passion of yours, and people want to know the story behind it. They want to know, you know, what inspired you, you know, why do you want to do it in Andorra? All of this kind of stuff they're really interested in. And, you know, likewise, you just don't know what people are going to geek out at. You know, I mean, my personal passion is the theory of learning, you know, so what I talk about is, you know, why people learn, how you engage, you know, people to learn. Now, obviously, that's not everybody's passion, but there are people in the world that are passionate about that. And my job is to basically speak to them when I am, you know, doing my leveraging personal passions for our marketing. So what we're looking to do in marketing is we are looking to have the highest impact marketing with the lowest cost possible. Okay, so this does allow us to look at the leverages of marketing with some fresh eyes. Okay, so rather than assuming that somebody else is going to create your brand, somebody else is going to build your brand, somebody else is going to service your brand, the opportunity now is for the Dudes with Drones to look internally and go, right, okay, how am I going to make my paltry marketing budget go a lot further? Okay, and here are some ideas, and I would love any other ideas. Put your hand up and share. So let's go through some of the ideas that I've got that I've got written down here. So first of all, they're gonna start doing daily vlogs of their passions, right? And, you know, it's going to be messy to start with, but who cares, right? And as you take people on a story, obviously they're going to want to catch up with you on a day-by-day basis, right? So it's going to be daily operations behind the scenes, and they're going to set metrics for this. Okay, so okay, you may not want to do it every single day. There's 3 dudes with drones, right? Maybe they just, you divide and conquer, and they go, you know, we're all going to do one, you know, one a week, right? That's a low starting ball. They do say on TikTok that you should be posting like, you know, 3 times a day. However, let's start somewhere. Okay, so they all do 1 a week, or they all do 2 a week. Just imagine if they do 2 a week. That's basically going out to all your socials every single day. Bosh, fantastic. But they're going to make some targets there, and they're going to agree this is what we're going to do, and it's going to be in line with their what, and it's going to be, you know, geeky. It's going to be leaning into what they already do, so they don't have to go away and prep, right? They're just switching on the camera and going, this is what I'm doing. I'm basically geeking out on this today. The next thing that they're going to do is, they've noticed when they show up to you know, dudes with drones on the mountain, that there are lots of people, clients, that really want to get into the technical detail. So it's not something that they charge for on their events, right? But it is something that they get dragged into. So they're like, well, let's just record ourselves doing a whole load of tutorials. Let's put up a paywall on our website, and let's just get them to pay for it, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, it's interesting how you service a drone, how you, and yes, there is free stuff, but you know, there's also might be an opportunity to string 4 or 5 of those tutorials together, put a paywall behind it, and say, hey, you know, give us 20 quid or whatever it might be, right? And you can also use the technical tutorials to build a membership club, right? So only those that are part of our membership are going to basically get the technical tutorials, right? So these are other things that they're looking at, because they're doing it already, right? Then they're going to do these deep dive investigations that they're going to put on YouTube, right? So YouTube is the channel you go to when you're doing the deep, you know, larger long form videos. And this is when people come to them and they go, look, I've got a real problem, right? We want to shoot, you know, these people coming down the mountain, they're going circa 100 miles an hour. I have no idea if you can go that fast down a mountain. Please don't, you know, worry about the details of my story. So really, really fast. There's loads of trees, there's water, there's skidding. It's just an absolute, you know, and, you know, they want to know how they're going to do it. How are they going to do it? How are they going to bring their 3 drones, make sure that they're capturing the audience, make sure they're capturing, you know, the person on the bike, make sure they're capturing, you know, the terrain. What is that conversation going to be like? And that might be one. And then the next one might be a ski one. And then the next one might be, well, how fascinating is that? Excuse me, Mr. Customer, we're doing a bit of discovery. We're trying to, you know, show, you know, what the process is like, and the kinds of things that you need to think about as a customer with regards to, you know, making sure that the event is as high octane but as safe as possible. Do you mind us recording? No, we don't worry. Makes us look like a hero as well, because it's joint marketing. Let's record the client meetings. It's all virtual anyway, nobody cares. Then we're going to do some community outreach, right? So here again, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the people that, you know, operate, you know, they look after the dirt tracks on the mountain, and we're going to have a conversation with them about what they do on an annual basis in order to basically, you know, ensure that the mountain is, you know, well kept and available to have these high octane, you know, events. And again, they're doing this anyway, right? They're doing this anyway, and they don't have to outsource it. The other thing that they're looking for is they're looking for user generated content. So they're more than happy to basically post, you know, people's content on their socials, and, you know, share other people's user generated content. And they make a big thing out of that. If you've been at the event, please tag us in and we'll push it through your socials, right? So there's 2 things going on, you know. Then they're going to look at industry partnerships. What can they do for industry partnerships to basically, you know, but not have to pay for it, right? So these can be PRs, these can be writing articles. There's loads of different things that you can do with industry partnerships without, you know, they could partnership with a gin company, for example, you know, and they could do something together and make a story of how, you know, dudes with drones ended up, you know, with Flora Gin, you know, doing an event, you know, and, you know, the pre-event, you know, event after that, and of course wrap that all up into a really good social media strategy. And the other thing that you can do, which you do get prioritized for across all socials, is live Q&A. Okay, so obviously you need to have an audience in order to do that. You can't start with nothing. But the live Q&A sessions, you know, are you get, you know, ranked up on the socials more, and so they are stuff that is you know, is of interest. Now I know that Kieran has done some of this, because Kieran's business is Kieran, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm on the call.
Yeah, I just wondered what, because I know that you've done some, like, I mean, I've seen some of your stuff on TikTok, and you know, I wonder if you might, you know, give another opinion. I mean, my TikTok has not really done anything, but I just wondered if you might just talk a little bit about what kind of stuff that you've posted.
Oh, you put me on the spot now. Well, I mean, my stuff's quite technical, and it's very much kind of speaking to my audience. I'll tell you what's been really interesting about my stuff, and I've done a load of TikTok and Instagram videos talking about kind of technical stuff that I do that is probably only interesting to people who do what I do. And I don't get a huge amount of traction on it. But so last night, for example, I went to a networking event in Covent Garden, and a number of people, more than one people out of 50, walked up to me. Hi, Kieran, how are you? Great to see you. And I have no idea who these people are. But they're people in my industry who now know my face. So that's been really good. A slightly odd one, but I'm working with a friend on something else, and we were walking around the street interviewing people about what they think about the current situation with dating in the world. And those videos, we've had a number of videos now that have hit over 250,000 views. Wow. On TikTok, because apparently people are just interested in normal people talking about normal things. Yeah. So, yeah.
Good, thanks. I mean, there's a couple of other people I'd like to kind of shout out who are doing interesting things on this. One is Steve. So Steve Brown, who is hopefully also on the call. So he is doing some really interesting things with AI. So basically, rather than do the video live, what he does is he creates these the scripts, and then basically has an image of AI Steve, which he delivers out in a kind of newsletter. Steve, would you mind just telling us a little bit about that experience? And then Sam, I was wondering whether you would just talk a little bit about luxury locations. Steve? No, is Steve even on the call? No, not. Sam, can you just talk a little bit about luxury locations?
Yeah, so we do, or we did do a lot of video media, and we, similar to the sort of matrix that Juliet set out, we did, so primarily it's a real estate company in the Caribbean, sells property. But what we did, rather than just having videos of properties, we altered it so that we were like, right, we need to show property, which is interesting, but likewise, it's in the Caribbean. So yes, you've got a lovely house in the Caribbean. That's great, wonderful. We like that. However, one thing we realized is people wanted to know more about the area they were in. A little bit like these property shows, you know, a place in the sun, they go, oh, we're near the beach, this. So then we started showing the area. But obviously the area without context is not particularly interesting. So then we started altering that to more of a Sam and Nadia. Nadia's my business partner and wife. And we would then go out and say, right, we're on a boat. This is what we're doing. This is the experience we've had. We've eaten food. We've swam in the sea, etc., etc. It's 10 minutes from here. So it was kind of building in a different aspect, but also building our personal brand. Because the more people, one thing we realized, and it's a little bit like what Kieran said, the more people see you, excuse me, the more people see you online, and the more people hear you speaking and agree with you, it creates validation for you. And by creating validation, it builds trust. So I've had conversations with people walk in, they'll say hello, and they believe, obviously, subconsciously, not consciously, but they believe they actually know me quite well. They're like, we're friends. And I'm like, I've never met you, but they know exactly who I am, because I'll have kind of jumped off the boat. I'll have had drinks. I'll have shown a property. So they've seen my professional side. They've seen more of a personal side and that sort of thing. On top of that, so those are the two aspects we did. And then the third aspect was the really technical things that we would talk about, like the property market, and how the dynamics of, you know, world economics and COVID and the Trump administration would affect real estate prices, which would affect holiday rental prices across the world and passport programs and things like that. Now, that was much harder to do, but effectively you can use AI to kind of help with that. So those were our three main things, but our goal was to sort of say, let's talk about our core business, but actually that can be a bit boring. Let's talk about our personal brand, which kind of gives you a bit more information, and then something very informational. And we did also make it very interesting. So, but we just winged it. So again, if you don't know anything about anything of how to use it, neither did we. We used 360 cameras, drones, all sorts of stuff. We just went online, bought it, made a mess of it, started again, again and again and again. The one thing I would say, if you are creating content, sound is key. Make sure when you're recording sound that you probably record 2 copies of your sound. So that would be my one main tip if you are recording, unless you're, excuse me, unless you're in just a quiet room and there's no echo. Otherwise, if you're out and about or walking, which does make your videos more interesting. If you are just sitting down talking to a camera as a talking head, it can be a little bit dull. So you kind of want to add some sort of dynamic aspects to it. So yeah.
So Sam, thanks very much for that. I will get Steve to, it would be really useful if you could post, anybody who's got any socials, if you post it on the Discord so that we can all have a look at what's going on in different people's socials. I think that would be really, really useful, especially if they are, you know, video type socials. So anybody on the call that's got, you know, a TikTok account or an Instagram Reels account, it would be really, really helpful if we could just learn off each other, because, you know, I think, you know, well, certainly I'm pretty new to all of this. So yeah, if we can do that, then we can, you know, hopefully start learning what, you know, other people are doing. And the other thing is that when we look at the different types of socials, yeah, that is another thing that we will get into. So for me, for example, one of the things that I learned very early on is I don't want the whole of my life to be on my social channel, right? So there are things that I want to talk about and I'm passionate about, but there are things that I don't want to talk about. And so there is a point in this course as well that we basically look at what is our online brand, right? What is our online brand? So we can consistently keep talking about that rather than, you know, we're just happy to talk about everything. So, you know, there are kind of guardrails you can put in. Yes, Harry, lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, just a quick thought in terms of getting more value from your existing marketing content, which obviously takes a lot of time and effort to create. So you just want to make sure you're getting the maximum possible value. It's always worth mentioning the importance of repurposing the content across all the different channels available to you. So if you are spending time creating these longer form videos, then it's always worth just going through them, potentially cutting it up into snippets that you could then share on. So potentially if you're sharing it on YouTube, you could then cut it up and share clips on TikTok or on YouTube Shorts. You can also take your longer form video content and turn it into blogs or interviews that you can share on your website. So I think there's all these different things that we as marketeers could do to, you know, take your existing content and repurpose it and get more value from it. If that's the exercise we're looking at in terms of saving on costs and getting more value from what we've already got, then I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Harry. And I should say that Harry is our very, very well respected head of marketing at Growth Engineering and has done a massively fantastic job with literally no money and bootstrapping over the last sort of 12 years. So if there's anyone who knows about maximizing marketing on a shoestring budget, it is most definitely Harry. So thanks for that, Harry. Yes, Xavier.
Just a quick question in terms of automation for social marketing and videos and stuff like that. I was just wondering if anyone has automated that process at all, because I've seen a couple adverts and stuff and I was looking into it, but I haven't been able to find a specific software that's good or relevant.
We've done a little bit of research into the automated video editing stuff, if that's what you're talking about.
The AI, I know the one you're talking about, but also as in like, so let's say I want to post on 3 different social medias, but I don't want to go into each social media to post it. It's like you can just drop it into a software and it's like a pipeline that goes straight into all the different social medias. I don't know if there's a technical term for it. I just don't.
Yeah, there are marketing automation platforms that do that. There are platforms that do that. So the one that springs to mind, Harry, what's the one that springs to mind? Or Billy, what?
One called Buffer that's used quite a lot. There's Hootsuite.
We used to use Hootsuite, but for the kind of scale that we're talking, it was just more complicated. It was just quicker to, because every social platform's a bit different. This was always a challenge that I had, and you want to post slightly different content and slightly different text and slightly different descriptions and all this. And I often found trying to use things like Hootsuite was just a lot of money to actually just make things a bit more complicated, and it was easier just to do it kind of the old-fashioned way. It'd be interesting though if there's some AI stuff that's doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, Steve, I need to get Steve to post AI Steve. So, that's heavy duty content. So he writes it and then basically it's a video that looks like him, but I'll get him to post it on the chat. Right. Okay. So let's just look at the results now. So we all know that this is something we need to get on with. We really do need to, focus on basically getting our socials working in order to maximize the sales opportunities that we've got. So the result of, the dudes with drones was their marketing costs dropped, but they actually own things like their mailing list. They own things like their social channels. So, ultimately, they had just better control over, their brand. The other thing that they did is they started to create products that they could basically do virtually, right? So, sessions, live sessions, training sessions, those types of things. So looking at products and services that they can offer that have less direct costs associated with them. So, looking at all of these things together, and again, I've just noticed a spelling error on these. It's a nightmare. It's my world, right? Being dyslexic, it's like, seriously. So customer acquisition cost drops, business simplified, operations streamlined, and also you've got a brand that is so highly differentiated because there is only one you. There is on you, right? So it's not like, when we look at, again, going back to Porter's 5 forces, and we look at how we're defending our territory. How do we defend our territory? We defend our territory by innovating and differentiating. So this is just a great strategy for differentiating you against, your competition. And then, of course, automating anything that you can possibly automate, in order to allow you to use your resources on other things. And the automation tools that are coming out now, we will do a big section on automation. It is amazing what you can do, especially with, creating mailing lists, scraping mailing lists, doing automation on LinkedIn, again, so you can just, fire off or create how you want to warm up your lead database, and then the automation just does it for you. So just some incredible ways of doing more with less now in the age of, AI and automation. And by doing all of those things, right, marketing as well as streamlining, as well as, automating, obviously their revenue dropped because they got one less drone, but they made more profit. And ultimately, profit is really what we're here for. We are not here for revenue. As the old adage goes, profit is sanity, revenue is vanity. So, you know, by really looking at our direct costs and trying to make those as variable as possible, and trying to make our marketing as kind of viral and guerrilla as possible, we are able to have kind of better, you know, control and make our businesses stronger. We don't need bigger businesses, we need stronger businesses. And we do that by having control over, you know, our costs and building up those defensive walls, you know, as Porter so eloquently, you know, told us. So in terms of your homework, this is not like a finance exercise, okay? None of us on this course are finance people, but I do want you to think creatively about the types of things that you may be able to do in your business to make that you know, direct costs, you know, lower. Your variable costs are fine as long as you've got, you know, some sales attached to them. Do look at your operational costs, because some of those may be able to be automated, and then look at the types of products and services you may be able to charge for that you're doing already, like online seminars, like whatever it might be, in order to A, promote your own kind of brand and you know, awareness about what you do, but also people might you know, may be very happy to you know, pay for it. The other thing is that of course you can build this up. So let's say you're offering a whole load of free stuff, and then you decide to, you know, do a book. People might pay for the book, but ultimately, you know, you've got to build and warm up that audience. And the warmer your audience are, the easier it is to, you know, to sell into them. So that brings us to the end of the session for today. I would love any comments that anybody has for the last sort of 4 minutes. Just to the groups, bye Jared, the groups that we've got available, we can use Discord. So if you do want to you know, get together in your groups, we can use Discord. There are some meeting rooms there, and you can just drop straight into them. So if I look at the Discord now, I mean, I know that most of you are doing this in Teams anyway, so it's not necessarily something that you might need, but you can see here. So you're seeing my screen, so you can just drop into the Andorra group, and I can see already that in the lounge we've got Rana and Rosie. So do just drop in, and just start chatting about this stuff. You know, you can have your camera on or off. Discord is not the most stable platform, but it's cheap, it's free, and you know, it's kind of easy to do. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, guys. Please do post your socials. You know, if you'd like more information on any of our socials and how we've done it or whatever, just reach out to any of us independently. You know, we're all a bit cack-handed when we start, but I think the bottom line is this is something that we do need to get on with. And so, you know, let's make it a priority, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Okay, take care. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a lovely day.